On today's episode, recap the Blackhawks' hard-fought loss and trade rumors involving Anders Lee.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, just a reminder to go and hit that like button, jump in the comment section down below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. I have finally reached my goal of 2,000 subscribers, and we got it done before the month of January came to a close. Thank you very much to all my supporters out there. Really means the world to me. Let's keep it going. Let's keep racking up those numbers there. And last but certainly not least, do got to give a shout out to today's sponsor, which is Game Time. Be sure to go and download the Game Time app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps after creating an account to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Happy Friday. Hope everyone's Friday is off to a lovely start, even though it is some rainy weather going on across the Chicagoland area. Not a glimpse of the sun looks like it's going to find its way out today, but we are getting closer to the start of the weekend, so I think we can power through it. What I wanted to open up today's episode with Blackhawks fans was the Hawks' hard-fought, yet also sloppy 3-2 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes last night as they lose by 1 goal to the Canes for the second time in the last 10 days. There was plenty of sloppiness by the Chicago Blackhawks in this contest, right? Particularly in the opening 30 to 40 minutes. The Hawks didn't have a shot on goal until there was 6 minutes left in the first period. They were just way too choosy in terms of their shot selections, and you just can't be that picky against this Carolina Hurricanes team that doesn't give you a whole lot of time, space, or in general, many offensive opportunities. When the Blackhawks did get some of their best looks last night, for whatever reason, they were electing to pass the puck. They made some sloppy turnovers at the Carolina Hurricanes blue line that led to a couple of crucial goals, and I just thought their passing and execution and decision-making was not very good last night, but regardless, they still found a way to make this close in Carolina against a team that, they were without Taylor Hall and Sebastian Aho, unfortunately, due to an illness. Taylor Hall, of course, was expected to play against his former team just a couple of days after getting traded. But even without those guys, we know what Rod Brindamore's team, how they go about things. And I mentioned in my preview episode and even ahead of the first matchup with Carolina last week that this is a team the Blackhawks have really, really struggled against these last couple of years. And going into this game, the Hawks were actually just 2-10-3 in 15 matchups with the Hurricanes dating back to the start of 2021. So I didn't really expect the Blackhawks to come out with wins in either of their contests against the Canes, but for the first one to go into overtime and for the Hawks to get a point in that one, probably one they let slip out of their grasp, as in similar fashion to last night against Carolina, a Seth Jarvis shorthanded goal seemed to get the Canes going a little bit. But for both of these games to be 1-goal contests, for the Blackhawks to fight as hard as they did against, like I mentioned, a team that's got their number, has blown them out several times over the last couple of years, I was just happy to see that the Blackhawks made this thing close and interesting down the stretch last night. But there was lots of good, lots of bad that I want to get to from last night's game. We'll start with the bad, in particular from certain players. Got to start with Frank Nazar, because I think it was probably his biggest struggle of a games during his current NHL stint, as it seemed like he just was never able to find his footing. I swear I saw Nazar fall 4 or 5 times last night. He was the culprit of not electing to shoot the puck when he had some primetime scoring opportunities. Also had a bad turnover at the Hurricanes blue line that led to the Canes' second goal of the game. A little bit of a toughie last night for Frank Nazar, but we do know, as I mentioned following the first meeting, Rod Brindamore's team, really savvy, really smart, really good defensive bunch. You know, this top line and Connor Bedard is what they had circled going into this game. Didn't want to give them any time and space, so it's a tough learning experience kind of for Frank Nazar. Got to play a little bit harder against these teams that just absolutely hound the puck. No concerns whatsoever. Those are going to happen for a young kid up at the NHL level. Hopefully he bounced back bounces back nicely on Saturday in Florida. Also going to talk about Alex Vlasic, as he wound up being second to last on the game score chart last night following the game to Carolina. And it's been a couple, shoddy performances in a row out of Alex Vlasic. And to be fair, it's not like he's been, and I mentioned this on X to somebody, it's not like he's been a nightmare or anything on the defensive side of things. It's just he hasn't been up to the level that he was at for the opening 35 to 40-ish games of the season and what we saw from him throughout all of last year. And I do feel like part of that is, learning Anders Sorensen's system. He's now playing with Louis Crevier instead of, a more solidified top four guy like Seth Jones, who he spent a ton of time with in the past. So I'm going to cut Alex Vlasic a little bit of slack, but it has been a noticeably rough couple of weeks for him. Do wonder if Anders Sorensen eventually splits up Vlasic and Crevier just because they want to get Vlasic playing a little bit more sturdy moving forward. Also, Philip Kurashev was the culprit of the first bad turnover for the Blackhawks, leading to Seth Jarvis's shorthanded goal on a 2-on-1 break. Just plays that you can't afford to make against this Canes bunch that has speed and absolutely hounds you. I just mentioned it with Frank Nazar trying to be a little too fancy. Instead of shooting the puck on net, he pirouettes, spins, coughs the puck up, leads to a goal the other direction for Carolina. That's kind of what happened to Philip Kurashev too. Instead of dumping the puck in, he winds up getting knocked down, leading to a 2-on-1 break for the Canes. Lukas Reichel actually came absolutely flying back on that play to try and make it a 2-on-2 rush. It seemed like there was just a slight miscommunication between he and Alec Martinez in terms of who to cover on that 2-on-1. It looked like Martinez thought Vlasic was flying back to cover Seth Jarvis, racing for the far post. Instead, both he and Martinez kind of shift over towards the puck carrier, leaves Jarvis all by himself. That gets the Canes on the board to put them ahead 1-0. Do wonder if, Philip Kurashev has been better these last couple of weeks, but just because of that type of play, and I do know they don't want to be healthy scratching Pat Maroon frequently, I do feel like Maroon could jump back into the lineup on the fourth line for Philip Kurashev on Saturday. But the biggest frustration point of the game for the Blackhawks was just the lack of shooting the puck. You can't be that picky against this Carolina Hurricanes team. Again, I hope it's a little bit of a learning lesson for this Blackhawks squad moving forward. But even though there were a lot of frustrations last night, we still saw plenty of good things out of several members of the Blackhawks. Got to start with number 98, Connor Bedard, who scored his 15th goal of the season with a nice little sneaky shot 5-hole, learning how to beat goaltenders in different situations. You could tell Peter Kochetkov was deep in net on that breakaway opportunity, and he was setting up like he knew Connor Bedard was going to go high glove, which he loves to do a ton. And I've mentioned he's got to start shooting low. The Patrick Kane mentality. Start shooting low. Everyone thinks you're going to go high. Go low. Bedsy beats Kochetkov 5-hole, extending his point streak to 4 games, also giving him points in 16 of his last 18 contests. And what I really liked from Bedard in this game, Blackhawks fans, was you clearly saw the frustration come out in the second period. And I think one thing that's really bogus is NHL officials just completely refuse to give Connor Bedard penalty calls. And you can tell it's starting to get on his nerves out there. But with the Blackhawks being so frustrated and shut down offensively, you could tell it was one of those moments where Bedard recognized, hey, I might have to try to do some things a little bit more myself here. And that's good recognition by Bedard. These are the situations where I think he can try to press the issue a little bit. And he gets shut down when entering the offensive zone on a rush and gives someone a cross check in the back and then goes and finishes a hit along the boards. I was like, oh baby, we got a feisty and frustrated Bedsy. And even Derek King in the second intermission mentioned that Bedard was really close to finding the back of the net in that second period. Beautiful stretch pass by Seth Jones to spring Bedard for a breakaway. 15th goal of the season. That cut the Blackhawks deficit to 3-2 and made things interesting down the stretch. But I love to see Bedard stick with it and not let his frustrations get the better of him. I think as a rookie, that probably would have happened against this Carolina Hurricanes team. And I mentioned earlier in the episode, this Canes group does a really good job of executing their game plan. You know they want to try and shut down Connor Bedard. He was stymied last Monday, 10 days ago, against the Hurricanes. Nice to see him find his way on the stat sheet for a crucial goal in the third period. And Seth Jones, baby, remains excellent ever since the infamous nightmare game against the Calgary Flames. as I mentioned, the primary assist on Connor Bedard's goal, making that play happen with a beautiful stretch pass. That extends his point streak to 7 games, giving him 10 points during that stretch. Also led the Blackhawks with 5 block shots in 25 minutes and 22 seconds of time on ice. Led the game score impact chart for the second consecutive game. Seth is back playing like himself, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. And he and Alec Martinez have finally established a true top pairing, it feels like, here for Chicago. Also want to give a shout out to the second line of Teravainen, Dickinson, and Mikheyev. That was the most effective trio in terms of at 5-on-5 last night in their consistency in the analytics. And Tavo had a really sharp game in his return to Carolina. You could tell he had some extra pep in his step. Ilya Mikheyev got the Blackhawks on the board late in the first period to tie the game 1-1, showing off his wheels. Breakaway goal for his 9th tally of the season. Jason Dickinson with an assist on that play as well. He had an assist, 3 hits, and 3 block shots in this game. Nick Foligno with a beautiful behind-the-back pass to spring Mikheyev for that breakaway. That now gives Foligno 4 assists in his past 6 games. Also, shout out to Landon Slager. Didn't find his way on the stat sheet in terms of points for the second consecutive game, but he certainly made an impact and his presence felt once again. The motor, the forechecking, the defensive play, and the speed has been so noticeable from Landon Slager through his first 2 NHL games so far this season. Dude just finds a way to make an impact and is real frustrating to play against. He forced several turnovers last night, and the speed that he plays with, man, more noticeable than it was in his 16 NHL games that he played with the Blackhawks last night. A little bit confused how Slags was so low on the game score impact chart, but again, I think that's kind of a good reminder that analytics aren't the end-all be-all. If you used the eye test with Slags last night, you knew he was excellent. And then last but certainly not least, I do want to shout out Lucas Reichel. I mentioned that speed burst that he had to try and chase down Seth Jarvis's shorthanded goal. The speed bursts that Reichel has are just so noticeable, and I thought it was really clear that he was playing with confidence last night. The amount of rushes that he had in the offensive zone, I thought he made a couple of real crisp passes in the neutral zone leading to zone entries for the Chicago Blackhawks, and it just feels like along with that speed, he's starting to piece everything together at least a little bit better than he was in the opening 30 to 40 games of the season. Reichel has 4 points over his last 8 games, and just altogether from the eye test, you can tell he's starting to make an impact and starting to feel more confident in his abilities, which is absolutely crucial for a kid as young as he is. There are my thoughts from the Blackhawks. Hard fought, but also somewhat frustrating 3-2 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes last night. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, I'll talk about some more Blackhawks trade rumors, but this time as potential buyers. But first, I do need to talk to you all real quick about Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. And one of my favorite memories from last year was attending a concert. The energy and the excitement were absolutely unforgettable. And now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I personally have used Game Time probably for close to 10 years now when I was back in high school going to see the Blackhawks in their heyday, going to see the Chicago Cubs try and win the World Series, which they successfully did in 2016, of course. And I still use Game Time to this very day, whether I'm in Chicago or traveling in any city and want to go see a game or a concert. And I love how Game Time provides pictures from every seat in the house so you know exactly what to expect before you arrive and also before you make your purchase. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app, and when you do, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off with your first purchase. You can get $20 off to see Connor Bedard at the UC before the season comes to a close. All you got to do is use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps when you download the Game Time app. What time is it? It's game time. Segment 2, some interesting trade rumors coming out involving the Chicago Blackhawks last night as David Pagnotta, a.k.a. the fourth period on Twitter, jumped on NHL Tonight on the NHL Network and said that Chicago Blackhawks general manager Kyle Davidson is looking to bring in another veteran presence, someone who can slot into their top six that can help some of the younger kids grow and continue to develop. And they are currently looking for someone with a little bit of term, a veteran guy that can create some net front presence and offensive opportunities, likely coming on the wing. And according to David Pagnotta, the Hawks have been kicking the tires on Michael Bunting of the Pittsburgh Penguins and New York Islanders captain Anders Lee, who the Hawks actually reportedly kicked the tires on with the Islanders going back to last summer. So they've been showing interest in Anders Lee for quite a while now. Two very interesting names here for the Chicago Blackhawks, two names that we haven't heard a lot of in terms of affiliations with them. We'll start with Anders Lee, as I mentioned, the captain of the New York Islanders. Looking at his current deal, he's still signed on through the end of next season at $7 million, but then would become an unrestricted free agent. And I do not believe he has a no movement clause. And the Islanders have kind of been in this limbo spot for the last several years. They don't have a real good prospect pool that looks like it's going to help change the future all that much. So they're kind of stuck in a real tough situation. And you have to wonder if they've considered moving some of their key pieces, Matt Barzal, like Anders Lee, even if he is their captain and has been in that role for a long, long time and is a storied member of the franchise. He is going to be turning 35 years old in July, so you do wonder if New York is thinking about another opportunity for him in his career. As far as the numbers that Anders Lee has put up this year, he's got 39 points, 22 goals, and 17 assists in 49 games this year. A real nice bounce back after only having 37 points in 81 games last year. He is a four-time 50-point scorer and looks like he's on his way to doing that once again for a fifth time in his career. Also did so 2 years ago, so like to see that Anders Lee is still being a very effective player despite getting into his mid-30s. But it is pretty clear that he is more so a goal scorer now at this point of his career than a playmaker. Scored 5 power play goals in 8 of his 12 seasons. He's on pace to do it again this year. And what I also like about Anders Lee is he's got 8 seasons out of 12 as well with over 100 hits. He's a big boy, 6'3", 235 pounds. If you've never watched, listen, I'm not like the biggest Barstool guy in the world, but I enjoy watching some of their content. There was a sandbagger, Ryan Whitney and Paul Bizanet do with Anders Lee, and I believe Matt Barzal was there as well. You have to see the tree trunk legs on Anders Lee. I think he has the biggest quads I have literally ever seen. You could call this dude Quadzilla. He is, pardon my language, a brick shithouse out there on the ice. So that type of player I would certainly be intrigued by for the Chicago Blackhawks, even if Anders Lee is going to turn 35 years old this summer. And looking at his analytics, he might have some of the sneaky best analytics in the entire NHL. And again, analytics, I'm not and analytics are the end-all be-all type of guy, but they do help tell a bigger picture about certain players. And for Anders Lee, he has never had a Corsi for percentage below 53% since his rookie year in the NHL, and it's only been below 55% twice in his entire career. So still, this guy drives play for his team in the right way, and the Hawks just do not have many guys that they can say the same thing about. So while $7 million for Anders Lee, one more year, and he is going to turn 35 years old this summer, it's not, the most attractive trade piece out there, but I do think this would be a good addition by the Chicago Blackhawks if this is truly what they're looking for, because Connor Bedard still is going to be on his entry-level contract with Anders Lee, $7 million on the books, and once he turns 37, if the Blackhawks were to acquire him, I doubt they'd see much of a future for him here and that they'd be thinking about extending him. So they could afford this $7 million on the books for Anders Lee, and I still don't think it would take them. Maybe it takes them out of the true upper echelon superstar market in the 2025 free agency class, and that's kind of the question that Kyle Davidson has to ask himself. And I kind of outlined all of these decisions that he has to make on yesterday's episode involving Mikko Rantanen, Mitch Marner. You're going to have to pay a hefty price. Those guys are getting towards 30 years old. And oh yeah, they're going to have to choose the Chicago Blackhawks on the open market. I do think that's easier than a lot of Blackhawks fans are giving the team credit for, because I know they're a dumpster fire and they've done a lot of losing, and people are like, who wants to go and join the Blackhawks? But this is an original six, historic franchise with a great fan base, always known for having great support in the arena. people know what the United Center is when it's absolutely rocking. They know Connor Bedard is here and the Blackhawks have a deep prospect pool. I'm not going to act like it's the most attractive destination out there, but I don't think it's as unattractive as some people may seem. But still, Mikko Rantanen and Mitch Marner, yes, are going to have to choose the Blackhawks, and then you're going to have to pay them a big price as they get into their 30s. Maybe KD doesn't want to do that. Maybe he tries to go after a younger Elias Pettersson. Maybe he tries to go after a cheaper JT Miller. If none of those options seem all that great, I wouldn't hate the Blackhawks adding Anders Lee, another good veteran presence that'll help teach these youngsters how to play the right way. And as I just broke down, in terms of the analytics, the goal scoring, being a captain, Anders Lee plays the right way. He's just kind of dying out on Long Island with the Islanders. So, I don't know what exactly the Islanders would want in return. Probably picks and prospects because they don't have a deep prospect pool. And the Blackhawks certainly have the picks and the prospects to make this type of deal happen. So very interested to hear if we're going to get more rumors involving Anders Lee. That is not a move I would hate the Blackhawks to make whatsoever. Again, because even though he's 35 and is starting to slow down a little bit, but still looks like he's going to be a 50-point producer in 2 of his last 3 seasons, I still think it would be a fine addition by the Blackhawks, considering of when he would come off the books. There was also, though, rumors from David Pagnotta suggesting the Blackhawks were looking into Michael Bunting, who also, like Anders Lee, has 1 year left after this year on his current deal at $4.5 million, so the less expensive option compared to Anders Lee, but also probably the less attractive trade piece. Bunting's kind of bounced around these last couple of years after beginning his year with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He spent the last 2 years with the Pittsburgh Penguins after just 1 year with Carolina. This season, he's got 27 points, 14 goals, and 13 assists through 51 games. Did have 63 points in his rookie NHL season. He played 21 games the year prior. Was he a rookie? Was he not? I don't really know, but a very effective first full year in the NHL for Michael Bunting. Also had 55 points, 19 goals, and 36 assists in 81 combined games last year for the Canes and the Penguins. The problem for Bunting this year is he's turned into a power play merchant. He's only got 5 even strength goals in 51 games this season. He's also not nearly as physical as Anders Lee, doesn't have the same amount of size, but is the younger of the 2 players and has, of course, found some success in his young career at the NHL level. Both of them are power forward type of molds. Lee, I would say, is the more true type of power forward, but both guys score a lot of goals in tight, score goals in the dirty areas on the man advantage. I think it's an interesting decision by Kyle Davidson to go after these 2 guys, and I don't know if it necessarily makes sense for the Blackhawks to go and do this at this year's trade deadline, but he does want to help out this offense and give these youngsters a little bit more true veterans who can help them. I think it kind of makes sense. The timing of it is a little bit weird, and you got to wonder, like I said, how it impacts the Chicago Blackhawks and their free agency plans going into the summer, but it seems like there are a lot of options on the Blackhawks radar right now. I would personally like to see them choose Anders Lee if it were between him and Michael Bunting. But yeah, you got to wonder if they do take on one of these guys. I don't know if it necessarily would. I don't know how the numbers would fit. They might have to trade Seth Jones if they wanted to, take on Anders Lee's contract and also get a Mikko Rantanen or Mitch Marner in the offseason. But yeah, interested to hear if we get any more rumors or any more follow-ups on Anders Lee or Michael Bunting in the next couple of weeks as we lead up to the trade deadline. But they're the latest rumors that we heard from David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period on NHL Network last night. Definitely had to share some thoughts on that here on today's episode. Coming up in just a moment before I close out today's show, still got to go through the 5 Blackhawks prospects nominated for the Hobey Baker. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just want to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast so that you can become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. And you can easily find the link to Locked On Fantasy Hockey right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, as I mentioned before the break, before I close out today's show, definitely wanted to go over the 5 Blackhawks prospects who received Hobey Baker Award nominees, the most prestigious individual award in all of college hockey. I think there's probably only one true Blackhawks prospect who has a chance to win the Hobey Baker, but still love to see 5 of them in college hockey get nominated for this award. We'll start with Dominic James, 2022 6th-round pick for the Blackhawks, has 21 points, 10 goals, 11 assists through 23 games during his senior season for the Bulldogs as the team's captain, leads all UMD skaters in both goals and assists, has good experience at the college level, played for the United States at the World Juniors in the past. Would like to see the Blackhawks give him an opportunity because of his speed, his two-way game, and his ability to play a true center ice position, I believe. I think James is worthy of getting an entry-level contract. Aiden Thompson is going to be an interesting one. He was a 3rd-round pick for the Blackhawks that same year in 2022, one of the leading point scorers in all of the NCAA with 30 points, 13 goals, 17 assists in 24 games. That's good for 10th in the league in points. Wearing an A for Denver as he returned to the team to help them win back-to-back national championships. But just from a numbers perspective, you got to wonder if the Blackhawks, do they have the room to give an older guy? Aiden Thompson's going to turn 23 years old in February. Do they have the room to give an older guy like Aiden Thompson an entry-level contract? Definitely something to keep an eye on whenever his season comes to a close. The one true Hobey Baker nominee that I think has a chance for the Blackhawks is Sam Rinzel, 2022 1st-round pick, 25th overall, has 25 points, 9 goals, and 16 assists in 28 games as a sophomore. 2nd in points, 2nd in goals among all defensemen in college hockey. Kid has so much runway and such a high ceiling. I do think it's even a long shot, though, for Sam Rinzel to take down the Hobey Baker, but I said 2 months ago, and I'm a man of my word, if Sam Rinzel manages to win the Hobey Baker, I will get a Rinzel lip tattoo because that's how excellent his sophomore season has been. Would not be surprised to see him sign his entry-level contract and make his NHL debut with the Blackhawks whenever his season comes to a close. Ryan Green is the next Blackhawks prospect nominated, 2022 2nd-round pick, 57th overall. Has got off to a really nice start here as the calendar shifted over to 2025. Now has 24 points, 11 goals, 13 assists in 23 games as a junior while serving as co-captain for the Terriers. And like Sam Rinzel, I bet Ryan Green signs his entry-level contract and makes his NHL debut with the Blackhawks when his season comes to a close. Last but certainly not least, Sasha Boisvert, 2024 1st-round pick for the Blackhawks, 18th overall selection, has 18 points, 9 goals, and 9 assists in 23 games as a freshman for North Dakota, one of the most outstanding freshmen in the entire country. Will expect him to play at least one more year with North Dakota, but I've been really happy with what I've seen from Sasha's development this year. His shot is absolutely outstanding. And I had someone in my comment section be like, I think you misunderstood what Corey Pronman was saying in terms of like the tools, thinking that I was like, I don't know how to put this, thinking he was meaning he was talking about their skills, where they're at right here, right now. Like, no, I know he was talking about where they translate to the next level. I just have that much belief in Sasha Boisvert's shot. If you don't, that's fine. We all have our own opinions, but I believe Sasha Boisvert has a high-end to elite shot, not just for a kid in college hockey. For a kid who's 18 years old, there is so much more room for growth in that shot out of Sasha Boisvert. A lot of power on it because he's a big kid. Because of his notorious work ethic, I expect him to only get stronger, and I expect that shot to get better. I think it's going to be a high-end shot at the next level. I truly believe that. Out of these 5 Blackhawks prospects, though, like I said, Sam Rinzel, probably the only one with true Hobey Baker aspirations, but another reason to stay high on the Chicago Blackhawks prospect pool. 5 Hobey Baker nominations for general manager Kyle Davidson. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way you can tune into the show on the go when you're driving to and from work. So until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekends. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.